Hello there, welcome back. And now I'm going to finish off with A Sound of Thunder. Now, what the hell is this category? Now, this is another one of those disastrous films that I cover that defies explanation. This is a bad one. It's directed by Peter Hyams, who I did some videos on. I did a video on a few of his films recently. And he's a director I liked when I was younger. He's kind of middle of the road kind of director, sometimes reliable, sometimes not. But this was the kind of film that knocked him pretty much out of the business, really. Like after this one, he had a hard time finding work again. And some of it's not his fault, but some of it is. It's some of those things, is those budget things. And as you can see from the image behind me, the special effects in this one are it's terrible. Look at this. That's from the film. It was made by a much bigger budget film. The studio behind it crashed and had to go with effects that were not up to snuff. But the film itself, even before that, was not up to snuff. It was one of those ones that was like, yeah, that was a problem, but it wasn't the only problem. There was a lot of other problems in this film too that couldn't really be excused. For a start, this film does feel like it's a TV movie for the Sci-Fi Channel, for the plotting and the writing. It does not feel like it's a major motion picture. There are moments towards the end where they do some special effects, chased by monsters that look a bit more big budget. But even then, they have to deal with the bad special effects on the CGI front that were meant to be filled in later. So there's some bits, but it's lit quite nicely for the darkness, and then suddenly you get a terrible CGI effect, and so it's even that takes you out of it. But the script's terrible. The script's really bad. Now, it was an adaptation of a Ray Bradbury story from the 50s, a short story, and which built in a few things. It was just the idea of you change something, even if you do take a lot of precautions in the past, you change one thing and it might have unintended consequences. So they take this idea and they cover the short story fairly early on in the film, then try and adapt to make it much broader ramifications. But it does not feel like what they did to change the past actually would have caused the ramifications they said, which is a big dysfunction. It just feels like it's a plot device that's out of control, and it doesn't feel intellectually interesting at all. So basically, the plot is there's this time safari outfit that goes to the past. It finds this area where there's going to be a volcanic explosion. So everything in that area is going to be covered in ash, right? So they find a dinosaur who's going to die in this pit, this tar pit, so they can take hunters back, kill the dinosaur, let it run in the tar pit, come back in time, and these guys think they've done it. But the thing is, they keep on going back to the same time, the same location. It's like, wouldn't they run into earlier hunters? That's never brought up. That's part one of the problem. And it's a pretty big part one. It's like, it's stupid. It should have been different locations each time. The next one is something goes wrong with one of the guns. They can't shoot. So they've got all these safeguards that actually makes everyone in danger suddenly because the main gun gets damaged. They don't have safeguards. If this gets damaged, other guns can still work. It just sends an error message and other guns can work. That would be the logical thing to do. But no, they don't. But then the two hunters who are with them panic and go to the far end of the bridge with this sort of light bridge they're using to protect them. And one of them accidentally steps on a butterfly, which causes massive changes in time. Even though, right, get this, even though there's going to be a volcanic explosion where everything's going to die in this area anyway. So the butterfly was probably going to die. So that doesn't make sense. It would die from the smoke or something. And you see this volcano behind me. It goes off. If you're this location away from it, you're probably going to die. And that's, especially if you're an animal who doesn't know what's going on, you're probably going to die. A butterfly's going to die in this situation. But no, they don't die. It becomes something else where this thing it should have lived dies, and then it moves forward in time where everything gets changed slowly in waves. So it starts off, there's a couple of subtle changes when they get back, and then there's these waves coming through, which makes the trees become much wilder, all because of a butterfly, not dying, by the way. Then these creatures evolve that are much more ferocious, are killing humans. Then it just gets wilder and wilder, and a lot of the equipment is destroyed by all these trees spread everywhere, all because of a butterfly. One butterfly does this, right? They can't go back to the time zone because everything's been changed to sort it, apparently, until they can. Like, they don't give an explanation why they do it. They say, oh, we can go much further back and slingshot back to where they originally took place, and you'll be fine. Which makes as little sense as they can't go back in the first place. So that doesn't make any sense. And then the more and more creatures come up. They have to escape all the creatures to find a place. They go back to the location where they do time travel. It's destroyed. But there's a place where one of the original creators of the time travel experiment has a backup thing, even though she works in a university, and that would never really work. So that makes no sense, like, at all. Nothing in this film makes sense. And you're watching it going, what the hell? Then they finally go back and they actually manage to solve the issue by sending this guy back. He saves the butterfly. He warns the people at the area that this happened. And he tells them whose fault it was and blah, 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 because there was some issues that caused the problem in the first place, that the criminals in the organization created. And everything goes back to everything fine, all because of a bloody butterfly. Now, in a short story, a butterfly effect thing, you never know what's going to happen. That's nice and simple. But from a butterfly to all of this, these weird mutation creatures happening, I don't buy it. It's really, no, it's not. And James, you belong in the jungle, so go away. So it's kind of dodgy. It's really dodgy. The whole thing makes no sense. You're just watching, going, this makes no sense. My brain's going to explode. What the hell happened? Who greenlit this? Who allowed this to happen? I don't think they ever had the intelligence to think this through at all. They just never had a clue. So that's the one problem with the film. The film doesn't make sense. The next problem is they run out of money, so actually special effect that's digital looks like it was basically done as by the companies that did pre-renders. Have you ever seen any of the early Star Wars prequels? They did all this pre-rendering and it all looked a bit flat because it was not the final product. It was like, this is so we can put it in, you see what's meant to go where, and it'll help us plan it all. So they had to use that technology because they had no money to create these special effects. So everything looks like it's from a PS2. And these people in the front of the screen and the behind the screen, and the background just looks as crazy as this screen looks like. If you're watching me here, this is how bad the effects are in the film in some of the scenes. Like, literally, the way I look disconnected from my background. Because I'm using a very basic OBS thing. That's what we're dealing with here in the film. So that's a problem. That's where the director felt embarrassed by it. And of course they would, because if a professional director, you don't want that to happen to you. And despite the problem with the script, he directed the scenes fine. It wasn't the direction was a problem. The script was a problem. And some of the actors chose them as a problem, but the direction was fine. Except for the wig on Ben Kingsley's head. That looks wrong. He has a bizarre wig that even Sean Connery would have said, nope, not for me. So he's this grey-haired wig, and he's playing the guy who runs the time travel thing, and he's a criminal. And he obviously went and did the job for the money quite quickly, and go do something else he wants to do. Ben Kingsley doesn't seem to have a problem in doing that once in a while. Just go and do a film for the money, and then forget it exists, it seems. And then you have that issue. You also have this lead man, Edward Burns, who was in Pursuit of Private Ryan, and he's in some independent films he directed himself, but he's not a lead man. And he has a charisma of plank of wood. And every scene he's in, it's just like, I'm not taking this seriously. There was meant to be a Rennie Harlan film starring Pierce Brosnan, which would have just been as ridiculous as this film because they used this script. But it would have been much more, cheesy as hell because those two guys, no cheese. But probably more entertaining than this because this is not good because you've got a guy who's not suited to this part. Terrible special effects, terrible script with a plot that allows things to happen just because they want to show off some of their monsters they can build. That's the only reason why half this happens. They never planned out how to actually make it logical. Sorry that I've been talking for a while, so I'm sore. So with all those problems, but it just creates this thing where the film's not as terrible as some of the reviews make out. Like, some of the reviews were like, this is the worst thing ever. It's not. It's always a film that wasn't finished. Or it's always a film that would not have been great if it even was finished, but would have been very mediocre. But with the bad effects, it becomes much funnier and has much more personality because you can't believe they released this. But you can also see why no one invested in the film after the company collapsed. They'd shot it all, but they needed money for the effects. You can see why no studio bought it and said, okay, we'll buy this and we'll finish the effects off. Because the film itself had a dud leading man and had a plot that went nowhere. And it just didn't work. It just wasn't going to work. There was nothing you could do because the central idea was so flawed in execution. Like, the idea's fine if you use common sense with how far it can go wrong and what you can do with it. But if you just take a simple idea and then add tons of special effects, it makes everything look ridiculous. And I think anyone who saw the film, even in the basic form, knew this isn't going to fly. There's no way you can really do much with this. This doesn't work. But then again, you see what the stuff's released nowadays. Probably been fine now. But yeah, the film did not work. It's just a disaster. And it's a shame because the director has made good stuff in the past, but this is not one of those films. This is it's a film. It was one of those ones where why did you turn it down? Because this obviously did not work. There was something wrong fundamentally with this storyline. That how it was adapted from a much better, simpler storyline, it just fundamentally did not work, this adaptation. So it's, it got its perfect outcome ultimately because it got the terrible special effects. It was what the script deserved, So this is a definite what the hell is this? It's not the worst thing I've seen in this series by a long way. It's not as bad as Dungeons and Dragons last week I covered, but it still has massive problems, and it's not something you can recommend for a laugh beyond the first 20 minutes of the special effects. You have to sit through the film with this terrible leading man. What's even worse, the leading lady's actually good. Catherine McCormick's in it, and she's good as in the leading lady part. She's not given much to do, but it's one of those things where you get someone who knows what they're doing. It looks so much worse than people who are not good at what they're doing. That's a real problem. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back with some more soon. But that's me for now. Right, bye.